Welcome to the 506th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome and thanks for listening. My nurse always tells people have very good ears. I can hear throughout my entire office. I just pick up on things. And I was checking out at our local grocery store, doing my self-checkout, and the clerk that no longer checks people out but stands and watches you check yourself out was standing there, and another clerk, another store worker, came up to her. And I guess what caught my attention first was the cigarette smoke that I could smell from her breath at about 6 feet away at least. And she came up and she was asking the other employee if who was her doctor, and did she know a good ear, nose, and throat doctor. And she had talked about her son having whatever issues, and so she told her the doctor that she used, and she says, well, I might need to call them because lately I've been laying down and I hear my heartbeat in my ears. And so I continued to check out, and I couldn't help myself. I said, you might want to see your primary care doctor because it could very well be vascular. Sometimes when you lie down or you bend over, you can hear that swishing or you can hear your heartbeat, and it can be from just curvy blood vessels in your ear or, some calcium around, but it also can very much be vascular. And especially if it's something new and it's loud and you hear this swishing sound. I should say, in the old days or in my office, when doctors actually used stethoscopes, we actually listen to people's carotids to see if we hear a sound like that, which is a bruit. And it's kind of a tunnely type, whooshing type sound. And people will ask, did you hear anything? And they think that we are going to hear something, but it's really the absence of hearing something that is beneficial. If you hear a bruit in the carotid artery and the neck arteries, that's pretty significant, and there could be very much a narrowing in the carotid arteries. We can also hear it under the clavicles, which are where the big arteries that go to your aorta are. We can hear it in the abdomen, where the aorta is. And then oftentimes, and your doctor should do this, and if they don't, you need to change doctors, but you should have blood pressure checked in both arms, and people should actually feel the pulses in both arms to feel that they're equal. Because if they're not equal, that's also a sign of vascular disease or high-grade stenosis. I didn't have that conversation with the lady in the checkout, but I couldn't help myself because, she's going to go to the doctor. She and her friend, her coworker, are diagnosing themselves as having an ear problem, when it's actually probably a smoking-related vascular problem that they're having. So the internet and people at Publix or your local grocery store probably aren't the best people to go for medical advice. But I do understand that people, and rightly so, don't have a whole lot of faith in doctors anymore, especially when they don't ever get to see the doctor for 5 minutes. And I hear over and over again that nobody ever lays a stethoscope or lays a hand on them when they're in the office. And it's a shame because we can actually learn a whole lot by talking to people and examining them. I was recently interviewed on the Chris Beat Cancer podcast, and I've got a lot of questions come in through my email over that, and there seems to be some questions. People talk about being plant-based, mostly plant-based, vegetarian. And one question I got was, but I eat some liver, take some liver supplements or some powder, or I still eat liver. And, in the olden days, liver was a health food because it contained a lot of vitamins because it's very bloody. I actually feed my dogs liver. They're carnivores, and it's mainly because it is rich in vitamins and nutrients. But it's also the filter for the animal and whatever the animal ate. And as being plant-based, we don't need all those vitamins because we get them through our plant-based vegetable sources. So vitamin A comes from keratin produced by orange and yellow vegetables, and there's a whole host of iron. We get our iron from grains and beans, so we don't need the nutrients in liver, nor do we need the toxicity. One of the highest sources of cholesterol is in the liver, so liver is a good source to bump your cholesterol if you want to do that. Carnivores, people that only eat meat, need to eat organ meat to get those vitamins. And back in the old days, it was one of the things that I really didn't like the smell of when my grandmother would cook. It's probably the only thing that my grandmother cooked that I just really couldn't stand the smell of was that liver and onions. But some people really like it. And again, if you're having trouble feeding your family and you can't get a hold of a lot of vegetables and, it's back in the day, then liver was a good source of nutrients, just like eggs were a good source of nutrients because they contained a lot of things, and you could get a lot of eggs from chickens. If you had a big family and you lived on a farm, that was a source of nutrients. Again, especially in the day if people didn't grow their own food or they didn't have access to fruits and vegetables. But that's really not how it is today. And we can get our nutrients without animals. Be it their eggs or their livers or other organs. I wish I had the time. Maybe I'll do it someday. Perhaps they'll do it again and I'll get to do it then. I should start getting healthy, maybe after my company leaves. I often hear that when I talk about health with people. It seems like it's never convenient, but when you ask people what's the most important thing, they always say it's their health. But then on a day-by-day basis, people tend to put it in the background. I don't take time for myself. I don't have time to do that. I'll get around to it someday. A lot of times there has to be a terrible health crisis to get somebody to start to think about their health when they're backed into a corner and they have no other options. But what about doing it just like you put money in the bank for retirement? Taking care of your health today is investing in your future. You could say, geez, there were 2 horrific airplane crashes the past week, and people lost their lives and dreams, and a lot of young people lost their lives and their dreams. And what if that happens and I didn't have chocolate cake or fast food, and then, I died and I didn't get it? Really doesn't matter then anyway, does it? So we don't have any guarantees of the future, but we can make it more likely that we'll have a healthy lifespan for the life that we have. I was listening to the podcast, and they were talking about what was their hinge point into running. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's Trail Runner Nation. It's a pretty entertaining podcast, but they talked about why they started running and what led to trail running and how it's changed their lives. And I can honestly, I started thinking about mine. They called it a hinge point. What was your hinge point? And a hinge point can be when you decided to start to take care of your health, or you decided to take up a sport or a hobby that led to a change in your life direction, so to speak. Sometimes it's by accident. I think a lot of times things work out for the best, and we go along on a journey, and for whatever reason, we're pushed one way or another. And when you look back, everything kind of falls into place looking back. But you can also look back and wonder if that event hadn't happened. I became a cardiologist largely because of my family history. But when I was young, as a young cardiologist, I really didn't think much in the way about my cardiovascular health until I got to be about 40 and realized that my cholesterol was starting to go up despite, eating what I thought was a pretty healthy diet. I started to get on an exercise routine, and one thing led to another, and I was doing a little bit of running because it was easy with a young child, so I'd run 2 or 3 miles. And the hinge point came when I got a postcard in the mail about running the Rome Marathon. My mother was Italian. She wanted to go to Italy. The postcard was raise money for diabetes, and you'd have a coach with the American Diabetic Association. You'd run a marathon. I hadn't even thought about running a marathon up until that point. But one thing led to another, and I ran that marathon, and I thought after I finished it that maybe I could do even better. And by doing that marathon, it led me to do other marathons, but it also showed me the way marathons actually mirrored life, and that you have a plan, you work the plan, and you have to have things on the, you just can't show up and be healthy. It takes some work and effort. The marathon running also became a way to travel. So it was a way to take my family to different places and see a city. So that was great. But the other thing that it did is it got me listening to podcasts. And through listening to podcasts, I heard about being plant-based and having a plant-based practice. Or something along those lines, where people like Dr. Esselstyn, largely practiced teaching people about a plant-based diet. And so it ultimately led to me changing my practice. It also led to a few injuries, so I learned how to troubleshoot some of those injuries and rehab from those injuries and actually apply them to my practice. And often as I assess people's mobility and functional capacity, it is really based on things that I've experienced as running marathons and then ultra marathons. Running ultra marathons took me one step further by increasing the duration of an endurance event. Again, it became even more like life and troubleshooting life, and became a journey in mindset. And I started looking at my own mindset as being perhaps more positive thinking when it comes to myself, as opposed to preparing myself to perhaps not be able to do something. So really all it takes is a little hinge point to put yourself out there just a little bit and not wait. Sign up for a 5K, a 10K, or something else that I heard somebody, even playing pickleball to increase their social circle because they work from home. But to put yourself out there and make it a little bit uncomfortable doing something new that also benefits your health, and who knows, one thing leads to another. People have a tremendous amount of excuses of why they can't do things, and concoct stories supporting those reasons. And it's one of the things I like about mindset in ultra running, because we can concoct stories when we're out there running long distances to support doing just about anything, persevering or calling it quits. Had several experience this week. I had an 80-year-old gentleman come into the office because he started running more. He had run in the past, but he started running again instead of biking because the traffic here in Florida gets really bad in the wintertime, and he was afraid that he would get run over. And it became perhaps safer to run. Unfortunately, he was looking at his watch and tripped and fell and got banged up. Not too awful bad, but got banged up. And he didn't come in saying, I'm not going to run anymore. He came in on, how can I do better? How can I run differently, more balanced perhaps, or troubleshoot so that I don't fall down, or run more or get a better heart rate. So at 80, he's still trying to improve. And it was, we had a great chuckle about shared experiences when, crazy things happen. I was in a swim run and I had a trip and fall on the flattest surface of the whole course. Things happen, but it's not a reason not to do it or not to try or to extend ourselves. It just happens. I had I have an 89-year-old, I think I mentioned her on the last podcast, just ran another half marathon after having valve surgery 2 years ago, she's run 2 or 3 half marathons, runs a 5 or 10K about every week. Nobody gave her the manual and told her that, she shouldn't run at 89, but she enjoys the social interaction. She does quite well. She has a positive mental attitude. She's had a couple trip and falls, not so much running, but in other aspects of her life, but gets back up and gets back to training and motivates a lot of people about plant-based nutrition in the process. I have another 77-year-old that is trying to get her diabetes under control and has run a 5K and had a setback, again, a trip and a fall, not running, just in ordinary life, and has now back at it, picked herself up and signed up for a 5K, both in March and April. She was off probably 6 months from, one thing leads to another. So she had her trip and fall and got better from it, but life got in the way and they were traveling. So she didn't get back to her run walking and just quit exercising. And now she's noticed, diabetes is not nearly as well controlled, more aches and pains, and has lost a lot of fitness. But nevertheless, she's back at it doing her run walk, and she knows exactly when she goes around her neighborhood lake about how far it is and how she started, and tracks her progress. On the flip side, I had a 75-year-old come and talk about how she's waiting to hear from when her nerve ablation will be for her chronic low back pain. She has a BMI of 41, which puts her in the morbidly obese category, has yo-yo dieted a little bit, but never been very successful at moderation, up and down, and currently is in the process of up and adding medications, and has kind of come to the mindset where, again, things are happening to her, not because of her. And that's going to be a hard pill to swallow, especially as we get older. We think we're getting older and things are supposed to ache and not work as right, and there's nothing we can do about it. But sometimes it causes us to sign up for procedures or tests that might not necessarily be in our best interest. If you, and instead of doing exercises and weight loss, and nerve ablation might help decrease the pain for a little bit. It could come back, but there are also side effects. And while they are rare, they tend to happen in people who probably need the procedure to go best of all. So if somebody is large, if you haven't thought about it, there's a big distance from your skin to the spine. And if you've ever seen a spinal needle, they're look more like a knitting needle than anything else. And if a surgeon or interventional radiologist or orthopedist are trying to get to someone's spine, but they're very large, the chance of getting to where they need to get is limited. So those people have less success and a more opportunity for infection than other people. But nobody really talks about that. They kind of get told that, most of the time things go well and people get some relief. But that's not always the case. And again, the more risk factors you have, the less success that the procedure might be. Unfortunately, no one in the orthopedic community talked to her about weight loss as a cause for inflammation in her back and causing the problems. But I haven't been successful either in my approach to getting her to change. And part of that is because I just was supporting her in the pace of her decision as she was making changes. And she would disappear and come back and disappear and come back. And she never could really commit to being plant-based or commit to consistent change on a day-to-day basis. And it becomes very difficult when people don't want to actually dive into what they're doing that's resulting in sabotaging their weight loss or sabotaging their health journey. It may be that, and a lot of times people remember the good days. You know, they remember the vegetables and the salads they ate, but they don't remember the things that they tasted, or the meals that they went out for, or the so-called cheat meals, or the comfort foods. And those are very sabotaging, because when we say cheat, it's negative. We think we're cheating or having some comfort food perhaps, or a day off, because we've given up so much. And so right there is kind of a recipe for disaster, because you're saying that what you're doing is limiting yourself greatly, and you're just waiting for this to be over, instead of embracing nutrition as a potential for health span and health. Humans are very resilient. We can adapt to anything. People get a cancer diagnosis or have to have a bypass. You know, they do what they have to do, or go through chemotherapy, lose their hair, have a leg amputated. They come back. You know, we have the will to live and come back from all these different things. So we can make changes. We think we can't, but we can make changes. But we can also make changes back the other way. And most of us have not been plant-based all our life, so that change requires a good bit of effort. And a lot of times there's not a lot of support, but it really doesn't matter, because most of what we do on a daily basis, we do because we want to, not because somebody else told us. We brush our teeth, we get up at a certain time, we make our bed, we do things, we clean our house. We do it because we choose to do it, not because somebody else expects us to do it. People say they want support, but I can tell you from my own practice, there's a lot of people that want support, but they never show up to a potluck. They never show up for a nutrition lecture. They never show up for a mobility class. They never make a group walk session. So it's an excuse more than anything that they want, because we provide an opportunity for like-minded people to get together and to support each other, but there's only a handful of people that actually participate in doing that. There was a JAMA article published this week looking at obesity, and I quote, "Obesity is a complex, chronic, relapsing disease, and the patient is not to blame or at fault." I could not disagree with it more. The paper was written as how practitioners should approach people that are overweight or obese, and how we have to choose our words carefully and be empathetic, which I think is certainly necessary, but I think we need to educate people in the truth, and the truth is that you can change. You can change your outcome. You can change your health outcome, not just with obesity, but a lot of lifestyle diseases. And to say these aren't brought about by our choices is not being truthful. And if I'm not being truthful about that, then why would you trust me on anything else? To not support somebody in their change, not to educate them, not to tell them that they can change, better their blood pressure, their cholesterol, their weight, their joint pain, their inflammation, their decrease in their cancer. That is what is a disservice, not telling somebody it's not your fault that you've got cancer. It's not your fault that you have heart disease. Of course, nobody does it on purpose. And, you know, people don't realize how many bad things there are in food. Everybody else is doing it. If somebody else doesn't seem to have a problem, why can't I? Or they look at other people and they see they're in the same boat. I understand all those things, but again, not to educate somebody on the truth, I think, is a disservice. Nerve pain is very painful. It's very difficult. It's there all the time. It's aching. It's a gnawing pain. People will do anything just about to get rid of it. That's why we have an opioid addiction issue a lot in the setting of chronic back pain. That's why there's a lot of unnecessary surgeries done, because you want it to go away quick. You know, people often ask me, when will I get better from whatever? They want it to go away quick. But by numbing them to pain, by radiofrequency ablation or opioids, is saying they don't have a choice to change the etiology. So nobody addresses what's wrong and what's the etiology of the problem when we just band-aid everything that happens to people and say you don't have a choice. we can control how we think and act about things, but not without practice and not without recognizing our limitations or how we think about things. The example I use in running, when things start to go bad, the first thing that comes to my head, the wheels are starting to fall off. You can go down a whole slippery slope when you say that. The wheels are falling off. There's nothing I can do. I'm out of control. I'm spiraling into oblivion. Or I can start to assess the situation. What is really going on here right now? Am I injured? Am I just cramping? Is it a hydration and nutrition? What can I do? Can I stretch? Can I change the side of roads? I can troubleshoot. What actually is going on here versus what do I project that I have no choice but to let the wheels fall off? Or I've already had a cheat meal and I've gained 2 pounds, and what choice do I have? I have no control over what I eat. What choice do I have? My blood pressure's up despite what I do. There's too much salt in all the food. So we do have a choice, in practicing mindfulness and practicing listening to what our head says is very important. We listen intently to what other people say, but we don't pay much attention to the dialogue that goes in our own head that kind of drives our behavior. We always have a choice on how we react to things. What do you really want? Is your health really important? How do I apply that on a daily basis? You have to have a plan. And we can help you with that plan. We can help you to be more mindful and to make better choices and educate you on how you might prepare different foods that are more healthy, and look at the different things that you may not have known that are high in oil or high in salt or contaminated or high calorically dense or have a lot of different chemical additives in them. We can help help you to be the detective on how to change your lifestyle choices. But you have to be willing to take a good look. It's not throwing stones. It's not being non-empathetic, but we have to take a good, honest look at ourselves and see what we need to do. I asked the lady today, 75, what's your plan to live independently? More things are happening. Back's hurting, knees hurting, can't get around. She didn't have a plan. If you're 79, if you're 75, the life expectancy is 79, average life expectancy, and you're obviously deteriorating in health and increasing in weight, what's your plan to live independently? And it never crossed her mind. But it's a very real thing. We see, unfortunately saw it down here with the hurricanes. People can't take care of themselves because there's just too much to do. It's too overwhelming. And if you're not in good health, it's hard to deal with other stressors that we don't see coming. I've talked about iron in the past a little bit, but I want to bring it up because I had some questions, and I was listening again to a podcast where a coach was starting to take on the role of a doctor and suggesting that his clients take iron to increase their ferritin levels to improve performance. And that struck me as being very odd, that he would ask them to get a ferritin level and use that on the basis to take iron. And of course, they recommended a certain iron supplement. And he even admitted himself that he takes an iron supplement to improve his ferritin levels, but he didn't get his ferritin levels checked after he started taking the iron supplement. So first of all, if you're going to take a supplement, there has to be cause and effect. You take a supplement, what are you going to measure? Ferritin is a protein that binds iron. It is a reflection of the iron stores in the body, but not complete. So a low ferritin may indicate low iron stores, but it may not. And it's affected by other things. It's affected by stress and inflammation and liver disease. Transferritin is a transport protein that transfers iron into the bloodstream. And then you can also measure free iron in the plasma. But the biggest thing that iron does is it's used with folate and B12 to assimilate hemoglobin molecules, and hemoglobin is used to transport oxygen. And if people's hemoglobin is low, they are deemed anemic. So the first test should be to look at whether somebody has a normal hemoglobin. If you lose blood, your hemoglobin drops. If your hemoglobin drops, then you lose the ability to carry oxygen to your tissues. Your heart works harder and people can go into heart failure. But it's not always the case that your iron is too low if you just have a low ferritin. Iron is a metal. Iron oxidizes, think rust. So just taking iron to boost ferritin does not always result in an increase in hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is also made by a hormone, or stimulated to be made by a hormone called erythropoietin. So if you follow in the cycling world, that was one form of doping, was to take EPO shots, or erythropoietin. It's given to people with kidney failure because the kidneys make erythropoietin. And if your kidneys don't make erythropoietin, then you don't make hemoglobin molecules as you should. One of the other things that we can do is look at a reticulocyte count. And so we can look at how well red blood cells are being made. So if you were in an accident and you lost a lot of blood, you would be anemic, your hemoglobin would be low, and your reticulocyte count would increase because your body is pumping out more new red blood cells. If it's not, the question could be, are you making enough erythropoietin? And again, in the case of people with kidney failure, they may not. In the case of cyclists, they can use that erythropoietin to stimulate their bone marrow to make more red blood cells. High hemoglobin is dangerous, and a lot of cyclists die because of it, because they become dehydrated and their blood truly becomes thick with hemoglobin molecules, and they end up plugging up vessels and having heart attacks. People that have liver damage can have an increase in ferritin because it actually leaks from the dying liver cells. Inflammation increases ferritin levels, but it doesn't mean that your iron is good or bad. A higher iron concentration, so by taking supplemental iron, you can increase your ferritin levels, but you don't increase your hemoglobin levels, and that is the true test of performance. But one thing I did learn through all this is that ferritin, because it's a protein, it can be used in the doping world to actually carry other molecules, and it might ultimately be a way that maybe perhaps even a new way that people cheat at sports, because they can use this increased ferritin as a means to hide other performance-enhancing drugs. So I don't know, but when people start to recommend things that a little bit suspect, you can only wonder. The other thing that I get asked about a lot is collagen. Collagen is used to make our skin more elastic, less dry, our ligaments, tendon, bone. Exogenous collagen comes from pig hide is a good source of collagen powder. Collagen is a protein. It's broken down into amino acids, those amino acids our body makes. As we get older, we may not assimilate as much collagen as we did when we were younger, and it may not be as a result of being able to assimilate and put together the collagen as much it is as we don't produce as much hyaluronic acid. So again, our body produces hyaluronic acid, and that's produced in the skin and all the places that you make collagen, and those two together work to make the skin elastic, and people heal better and so forth. Our body makes hyaluronic acid, but it's also driven by testosterone and estrogen. So as those levels go down with aging, our production of hyaluronic acid may also go down. So the question is, do you supplement? And do you supplement with collagen or hyaluronic acid? I did a little dive, and I went on Amazon and I looked in because people are talking about vegan sources of collagen, and I wanted to know what a vegan source of collagen might be. And it turns out It's just a bunch of amino acids that are derived from plant-based fruits and vegetables and protein. So pea protein and various fruits and vegetables. The protein's extracted, the amino acids are isolated, and that's mainly what's in the protein or the collagen powder. So it's not collagen, it's the amino acids that go into collagen. And then a lot of them have, in the bottom of them, hyaluronic acid as a means. And they have vitamin C, and they also have B vitamins. And sometimes you have to be careful when some of these supplements have a bunch of things in them, because you're not sure exactly how much of each one of those things are actually in them, and it varies from batch to batch. But excessive amounts of B vitamins can actually be dangerous. So, I kind of thought it was funny that, everybody talks about collagen, but when you went down the plant-based source, it wasn't really collagen. It was everything that made up collagen, plus a bunch of other things that helped your skin. So if you eat a good, healthy plant-based diet, you're getting all those amino acids, you're getting plenty of B vitamins. You may not have as much hyaluronic acid, and that might be something to consider as far as a supplementation. Magnesium is also a promoter of this reaction. And of course, we know that magnesium can be found in spinach, beans, kidney beans, black beans, edamame, avocado, white potatoes, brown rice, almond, cashews are just some big sources of magnesium. But the best part of a plant-based diet is that we eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, so we can get a little bit here and a little bit there and ultimately get plenty of magnesium in our diet. It's not something that I have seen people deficient in. Zinc is another co-founding factor. Again, we can get it in whole grains, breads. People say they don't want to eat bread. It's a good reason. You can get some zinc. We drip it in a variety of ways, pumpkin seeds, cashews, but there's a variety. Everything has a little bit. We only need a little bit in our daily requirements. So that's usually not a problem. Colorful plate, wide variety of fruits and vegetables, and you got those things covered. If you take a animal-based collagen, typically it comes from, again, some animal hide or cartilage, tendon, gelatin parts they break down, make it into powder, and that's what you're getting. But ultimately, your body takes that and breaks it down into those amino acids, and then you rebuild them back into collagen. So you don't keep it as collagen, it breaks down into its amino acids. So there's no real reason to take animal collagen either. If you want to try hyaluronic acid, the dosage that have been studied are somewhere between 120 and 240 milligrams a day. Again, when people do supplements, I say test. So if you're going to test, look what you're looking for. You're looking for skin health or what? Take it 6 weeks, see what you're doing or not. But it's certainly not something that's essential. Some people have very thin skin, they bleed and bruise easy, it might be a reason to try it. But it's not because you're plant-based and not getting enough collagen in your source by not eating pork rinds. So in summary, I really wouldn't waste my money on something that has a whole bunch of different things, because you can't figure out, one, how much of each of those are and which one might be actually helping you. So it's usually a pretty big waste of money to get these all-in-one, fix-it-everything type supplements. I had a lady come in the office today or the other day that had spending a lot of money on supplements, but her diabetes wasn't any better controlled, nor was her blood pressure. So eat healthy, a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and exercise, and chances are things will be good. If you'd like more information about our practice or how we could help you, and to kind of go over your dietary regimen, exercise regimen, go over to drdulaney.com, doctordulaney.com, and check us out. You can email me at Jami, Jami, at drdulaney.com. We do a consultative phone call that's free. If you think you might want to join the practice and you want to talk to me about how you might join the practice, would love to talk to you. You can even call the office, 941-235-9229. And get some information on how you might get a consultation. Thank you as as always, for listening. Share the podcast with your friends, and go move your body. Be healthy. Thanks for listening.